open our long-term plan deliberations meeting on the 27th of May, 2024. Start with a Karakia.
Morning, councillors. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina, ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, ehi aka ana ti arakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei mauri ora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Executive. Much appreciated. All right. Okay. Health and safety statement. We'll take that as read. That is on page 6 of your agenda. Nothing new in that, so we'll take that as read. Apologies. Do we have, I see we've got Councillor Cookson and Councillor Mahuta, as well as Councillor Kneebone online. In the chambers, we have Councillors Hodge, Smith, Dunbar, Smith, Nicol, Strange, Downard, Marr, Graff, Hughes, and Clarkson alongside myself. So
And we've received apologies from Councillor Hodge for early departure today and absence on Friday if the day is required.
Okay. Right, so we don't need early departure for today, Councillor Hodge? Okay. All right, do I have a mover for those apologies? Councillor Strange, a second, and Councillor Nicol. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, confirmation of the agenda.
There are a couple of minor changes. No, I'm thinking of the minutes. I'm afraid.
Thinking of the minutes. Nice. All right. Okay. So, thank you. We've got a mover and Councillor Mahuta. Just while we're talking about the agenda, I just want to flag for councillors how I intend to work our way through these deliberations. We all know that the proposals each can have a cumulative effect and impact, and also have impact over years depending on the nature of the decision. So my intention is that we'll go through each of these. We can ask for points of clarification. We can have the debate on the issues. We'll take a straw poll, so we will not move a motion at the end of each one. We'll take a straw poll, so we have a bit of an inkling of the direction, but we will wait until we get through all of the items so that we can look at the impact of the LTP as a whole and take that into consideration when we make our final decision. All right? Do you want to make
So just to clarify, you're suggesting after 7.10 there'd be another item which would be decisions on the recommendations?
That's right. We'll run through all the items and they'll appear in the minutes, probably under the master heading of item 7. So we don't need, I'll keep some timestamps of item by item if I can, and we'll take it from there.
All right. So sorry, are we adding a 7.11, which is the final decision? Okay.
So, Madam Chair, there is a resolution at the end of the agenda which sets out the rates increase and total rates revenue required. So that can be updated based on where council gets to with its decisions over the week.
Right. Happy with that? Great. Okay. So do we have a seconder? Councillor Dunbar Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we go to disclosures of interest. Any particular disclosures of interest? Councillor Hughes, would you like to disclose your particular interest again?
Yes,
Just microphone.
I submitted on the natural heritage rate and so I submitted on the long-term plan, on the Regional Development Fund and on Tahuya. Oh, sorry, Tiwaka, sorry. Yeah, I didn't submit on Tahuya.
Great.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other disclosures? No. Well, sorry, you moved, didn't you, Counselor?
We don't need to.
Oh, we don't. No. We'll just note them. Thank you. All right. Now we'll go on. Sorry.
Just make a comment. So Councillor Hughes, I think you're indicating that you'll probably refrain from discussion on those matters that you referred to, but that doesn't exclude you from being involved in other matters in the overall decision of council.
Right.
Just a point of clarification, does that exclude me from voting on the long?
No, that's what I was saying on the overall decision of council.
Okay, we'll now move to confirmation of the minutes.
Right, second time lucky. There are two minor changes to the minutes. One is that Councillor Story's declaration of interest was incorrectly recorded. It should have just been noted as a membership of, as an interest of Federated Farmers. The second one is one of the cover sheet dates is incorrect, the 16th of May.
All right. I have a mover for those minutes, Councillor Smith, and a second, Councillor Dunbar Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. We'll now go to item 7. This is on page 21 of the,
Chair, can I
Yep.
just raise a process issue?
certainly, Councillor Smith.
During the period between the petitions closing, we've received some cross parties. The surf life saving to counter what another submitter submitted on. That to me is inappropriate and should not be considered in any deliberations. And I understand the recommendation from staff is not to change the amounts anyway, but the reality is that they have the opportunity to present their case and shouldn't be corresponding. And I would just ask that we take no note of it. Being pedantic perhaps, but it is a process issue.
Through Madam Chair, thank you, Councillor Smith, for raising that. I might turn to Janine to see if she agrees with a comment I'm going to make. I felt like what was done was that we had some submitters giving information, surf life saving groups, and we had the acting chair of Surf Life Saving New Zealand clarifying a position. I think that was the reason that staff thought it would be useful to include. Janine is just checking the.
Through the chair, yes, that is the case, but I think elected members can put whatever weight they choose on that communication when they're making their decisions.
It may be a moot point, Madam Chair, but the reality is, well, I don't want to predetermine anything yet, but the recommendation is not to change the amount anyway, but it's just the fact that we're receiving correspondence. You know,
After the hearings.
Yeah, where does it stop?
Mm,
So, thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Okay. So, yes, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, without wanting to prolong this, I actually have had some involvement with Surf Life Saving New Zealand previously, and the presentation that was submitted was out of line with the way Surf Life Saving New Zealand normally operates. I actually sought further information from office, had discussions with the people responsible, and I think that they have spoken to the submitters, and they probably don't know whether they've withdrawn or not, but certainly there was an agreement that they shouldn't have done it. So
Okay. Janine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors. I've just got a couple of slides here, I guess, to talk through procedures for this meeting, as well as the item on the agenda around the overview of engagement. So with a bit of leave from the chair, just to run through some high-level points around what can and can't be determined through this procedure or proceedings, as well as an overview of the engagement activities that have been undertaken in relation to this long-term plan. So next slide, thanks, Dave. So just to be really clear, as I'm sure you all are, the purpose of today's meeting, this week's meeting, is for council to consider the proposals that it made through the draft long-term plan after having received and considered the submissions made by the public. Having considered those submissions, decisions made this week will determine the budget and the associated rates that will be set for the period of the long-term plan. Now, obviously, those rates will be reviewed on an annual basis through an annual plan process, but this is setting the trajectory for council in terms of its priorities and its funding for that next 10-year period. The process to change those will be either an amendment or a variation that occurs through the annual plan each year. Next slide, thanks, Dave. Just in terms of those consultation and decision-making principles, so there are certain decisions that can only be made through a long-term plan, and they are set out on page 21 of the agenda. And there are restrictions on the decisions that council can make if they haven't been included as part of your consultation process. So you may recall me being a little pedantic about what the consultation options are and how they're presented, because you do start following a particular course once you've actually determined what you wish to consult with and what those options are. So the key restrictions are around setting a rate that hasn't been consulted on through the draft long-term plan, or changing a rate substantially. And the other exclusion is a decision that triggers council's significance and engagement policy and wasn't consulted on as well. The purpose of the consultation document is really to provide members of the public information on those matters that council determined as being most significant and in relation to which you sought feedback. And for each of those, a preferred option was identified. That process gives effect to the consultation principles that are set out in the Local Government Act. And that's where the limitations on the decisions that you can now make actually come from. So the consultation provisions require you to have provided clear prior information about the scope of your decisions. Decisions have been invalidated by the courts where you're taking a decision that you haven't done that, undertaken that consultation on. And the views that have been presented by the community need to be received and considered with an open mind and need to be given due consideration. So everything that you've heard through submissions or the submissions that you've read, we have also provided you today with a whole bunch more points of feedback through the social media engagement that's occurred over that 4-week period as well. So that is all feedback that council should be bearing in mind when you're coming to your decisions today or this week. In terms of the budget, so next slide, thanks, Dave. So the agenda did contain a report that had estimated the impact of all the recommendations contained in the reports to assist council in assessing what it would mean if you were all in with the recommendations made. So if you accepted all the recommendations that were coming through from staff, this would be what the budget impact would be. Those key changes are coming through the Chief Executive's submission to the draft long-term plan, the recommendation around increased funding for biodiversity, and then there is also a report that you will receive through this meeting around the Tahuia funding pathway. The work that's been happening over the last few days is to run all of those numbers, particularly the CE submission, through the budget model to make sure that we had a really solid starting point for the discussions this week. There was, no doubt around those. But this position obviously remains subject to your decisions this week. So Dave, just in the next slide, please. So this is the starting point for us for this week. The key movements that you see illustrated there are in the first 3 years of the plan, with between a 0.6 and 1.2% increase from what was included in the draft long-term plan. In year one, the key uplift was we could see through the CE submission some additional funding required in relation to public transport, and then also the uplift in the Natural Heritage Partnerships rate from the $8.98 that was consulted on up to the $15 that most of our submitters supported. So that rate increase alone is a 0.9%. So I just wanted to present that for council so we understand starting point for this week.
Just to clarify, most of the submitters did not support the 15%, $15. The average was $8.60, and which was our preferred option, but we consulted on the $5.
We'll cover that off when
Yeah,
we
so,
discuss that particular proposal, all right?
So it was 42% in support of that, which out of the three options was the highest. But that's a decision that council will need to make. Absolutely.
I hear what the councillors are saying. It's just the way you presented that. I think what they're saying is, I think what Janine's saying is there's a larger amount of support for
For that option.
$15 than others. Wasn't necessarily a majority is what I hear the comment being made. That's accepted.
Yeah, that's fine. And like I say, I've taken the recommendations from the reports, which was to proceed with the $15. So that's built into these numbers. So you might want to see this potentially as a worst case scenario. The next page.
Sorry, just to clarify that you've talked about the specific uplift in year one. Any other comments on year 2 and 3 that led to the?
So the key drivers behind those shifts are in relation to the changes to public transport costs that were noted in the CE submission. So that's across those 3 years as well, particularly year 1 and 2, I think from memory. And the other one is the natural heritage uplift
That's
as well.
Those are the key drivers across all 3 of those
Yeah,
years.
correct.
As opposed
Yeah.
to anything else that cropped up in year 2 or 3.
Nothing substantial.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okie dokie. The next slide, which actually touches on the next report in the agenda. So happy to pause here, Madam Chair, if you want to deal with the first report, which was just an overview of the process, or take this one.
Sorry,
as well.
do we need to receive
receive.
that report, or are we going to hold all of that at the end?
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Please, and the basis of what the staff recommendations throughout the report are based on, because I detect a level of inconsistency. Insofar as where the majority appear to have supported or rejected a proposal, the staff submissions are often in line, and Ben's alluded to the point of the natural heritage rate, 42% is the largest group, but it's not 50%, which is Chris has alluded to. The other issue that concerns me is the inconsistency in the rural rate, where while only 51%, that is the majority, and throughout that report in the agenda, it talks of all the reasons that were articulated why it should not be in there, yet staff have maintained their advocacy for this rate, even though it's against the majority. So can I just get an understanding before we go too much further, what the rationale for the inconsistency is within the report, please?
Can we not deal with that on each one as we work through?
So through Madam Chair, the question that's been raised is, can a response be given to why, for the rationale of the inconsistency in the report? I don't think there's a rationale for the inconsistency. I think that they've been prepared by various staff, being through executive and through the process, and that's what's come out. I don't think there's a deliberate rationale for why that would be the case. I think I see Janine.
Yeah.
Have to, and I don't want staff advocating, because I'm looking for advice on this situation as to why they have gone contrary to the feedback that we have received. So I'll leave the point for the moment, but I'm giving fair warning. I'm going to be asking to understand.
I was just going to say, through the chair, I guess in assessing the recommendations that have been made by staff, that hasn't just been the percentage of responses received, it has been the rationale behind those as well. So it's a way submissions, not count them. But they are recommendations to council that council can make an alternative decision on. That's the purpose of this meeting.
I've got Councillor Marr, Kneebone, and then Dunbar Smith. Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just clarification, Janine, carrying on from Pamela's question. Just in Chris's CE report, it mentions that the shift of the Te Huia renewal costs were moved into years 1, 2, and 3, where they were incorrect in the budget. Is that what you're saying as part of that PT funding amount? So that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Councillor Kneebone.
Well, it's just a comment in response to your concern, Noel. I'd be a bit concerned if staff were providing a recommendation purely on numbers of for or against. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things they factor into, you know, and just because there's a whole bunch of reasons, if those reasons are unrelated to whatever the issue is, then I'd expect staff would be able to filter through that and that sort of thing, you know. And as has been said, if we don't like the staff recommendations, we don't like them. It's quite easy, you know.
And I fully appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Yeah, in the CE's submission, we were looking at an 8.8% rate increase in a 6.3 in this current year and an 8.8. If we could go back the slide. So we were looking at a 6.3% 24-25 and an 8.8 in the following year. Can you explain where the changes are and why we've jumped to 7.2 and then we've dropped back to 8.6?
So through the chair, as I mentioned, the recommendation that's included in the agenda around the Natural Heritage Partnership Program rate increasing to $15 over and above what was included in the draft long-term plan equates to about a 0.9% increase in rates revenue. So that's the substantive change that is between the CE submission, because that number wasn't in the CE submission. This is taking into account CE submission, all of the recommendations that have been made within the agenda to say where, like I say, if you're all in with supporting those recommendations, this is where the budget would be sitting.
And what about in the following year where we were at 8.8 and we're now at 8.6?
So it's the wonders of maths that you increase year one and the baseline from which you're measuring your year two increase then actually comes down. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. So we'll go to, so now we're on agenda page 24, right?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just the overview that's been provided in the agenda in terms of the consultation and engagement activities that have been undertaken over that period from the 2nd of April to the 2nd of May. As you'll be well aware, we received 862 individual submissions, providing close to 1,700 individual submission points, with 6 late submissions received. As well as the consultation document, there have been a number of engagement activities undertaken to raise awareness of the LTP. So radio and digital advertising, face-to-face and online engagement, targeted communication with landowners in the Lower Waikato. And so we've just provided up there, I guess, in terms of particularly those online channels, the level of contact or engagement that was had with those various methods of promotion or engagement over that period. What has been appended to the report is the extraction of all of the comments received through social media, with some theming of those provided for you as well. That's been provided so that you have the opportunity to see the full spectrum of feedback and comment that has been made, so that, again, you can give whatever consideration or weight you feel is appropriate to that feedback. But it is people who engaged in the process or in a process, a little bit of confusion at times between ourselves and other councils. But it is feedback that we've received, so that's provided for your interest.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yes, page 28 and 29, comment analysis, concerns about wasted services, frustration and concern, a lot of negative comments. Where's there many positive comments coming out in the online feedback? Because it certainly seems to have a much more negative tinge than the ones we received by paper.
I don't think we've done the analysis of supporters versus detractors. The key themes have been extracted. It is, again, information that the public have provided that I just think it's important for councillors to have in front of you as you're making your decisions.
Especially given a lot of people these days only use online media rather than submissions. It's interesting to note what the concerns are. Thank you.
Councillor Strange.
I read through all the comments. Usually I choose to be quite selective with what I look at online. However, there was a few what I'll call frequent flyers, names that kept cropping up again and again and again. So yeah, I think, Ben, to your points, there are a few keyboard warriors out there who choose to make comments but not follow through with formal submissions. So.
All right. And Councillor Smith.
I think, though, people are feeling the pinch out there, and some of these keyboard warriors, as we call them, that's strange. People are hurting. I suspect there's a lot of ignorance on what the regional council actually does. There's a lot of stuff about district or cities, and cutting through all that, there's an underlying tone that the public want council, this council and other councils perhaps, to meet the moment, to use that phrase, and pull back to what we really need to do, and cut out the nice to do's, the want to do's, and only do the have to's. So that's what I took from the theme of this ability to just say what they think without any care or challenged through the submission process. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the report. And it's really interesting reading through this in this triennium compared to last. Even I can see there's an intensity out there that's coming through that's heightened, which I've heard elsewhere. But the bullet points that you outlined on agenda page 28, 29, the summaries of what's come from that, some of them are quite concerning, and I'd say that this could be things like distrust of WRC, frustration, concern, and issues with the consultation. I think each time there's always an opportunity for us to do things better, and I've got a page or two of notes that I'll pass on to staff of just things I've kept note of that we can do better in future, just from picking up from the comments. You've probably picked most of them up yourself as well. So I'll pass those through. But yeah, just noting that we do read these, we do want to do better. So I hope that each iteration we get better at this. Thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about social media and all of the research that's been undertaken on this topic around the world over the last few years. And to be really careful about placing meaning and weight on things you think you can see in social media. Because actually a lot of the people that have made comment, I think the most important point is that a lot of the negative comment is from people who've made an assertion. And the point I'm making is it is an assertion. It has no content or factual evidence sitting behind it often. And then they have not followed it up with a submission, in particular, not followed it up with a submission where they came into council and gave us a rational discussion or explanation for why they wanted a certain thing to happen. It's really important to remember this, because actually a good amount of social media is actually largely designed to cause misinformation and concern and to divide. We just got to keep that in our heads, because honestly, when you read some of the comments that were on, and I actually on a number of topics read every single comment, and actually there were some very nice positive comments as well as some seriously negative and ill-informed comments, including the constant comment which proved that the people who made the comment don't know the difference between the city council and the regional council. It was just again and again and again criticising the mayor's trip to IPA, all sorts of things that have got nothing to do with us. Anyway, look, it's just a word of caution. We've got to focus on, I think, on the people who really made the next step and came in and made the effort to present a rational discussion to us, whether we agree with it or not. Those are the people I'd be focusing on.
Thanks for that, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to follow on from Noel's comments. I'm not sure who heard the Reserve Bank Governor talking on Friday, but he clearly articulated that councils and insurance companies in New Zealand will be responsible for they calculate 5.8% of hardcore inflation in the next 12 months. That means higher interest rates. We are part of that, and he's blaming all the councils in New Zealand. If you want to be part of that team of pushing up rates and pushing up insurance interest costs, then that's fine. But I certainly don't want to be part of that team or be associated with it. So you can say all you like about social media and everything else. People are hurting out there. We've got the Reserve Bank Governor coming out and categorically stating that councils are out of control. And I've since looked at other places where they're suggesting that councils are in fact greedy. So we need to be aware of those statements. Reserve Bank Governors controlling the country with the government. And we have a responsibility as well to do our bit to make sure that we are enforcing the government's initiatives to pull the costs back.
As the chair of this council, I would never accept a accusation that this council is in any way out of control. So that's my view on things. Just wanted to make sure it got stated. Councillor Downard.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Smith. And got 220,000 ratepayers out there, and not all of them can do submissions. You know, elderly just don't know how or have got the time, or other people don't in the community, and they are hurting. everything rests back onto a property owner, interest rates and rates. So that's a big concern to me. I'm listening to the other 220,000 that don't make submissions as well, the time, the people that are hurting.
I suppose what I would like to comment on and focus in on is where we see some real success come through in this consultation. I certainly heard directly, either through my personal social media channels or word of mouth, people coming and speaking to me. I heard significant levels of praise for how this council chose to engage with its community through a wide variety of channels, and certainly wanted to just, I suppose, drawing attention to particular comparison to the previous LTP in paragraphs 8 and paragraph 9 of this report. A click-through rate of 1.4% versus 0.78% 3 years ago. The number that watched the video on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, 146,981 times versus just over 79,000 3 years ago. I think that shows our willingness as an organization to look at different means to engage. And I take people's points that not everybody is online, not everybody likes to engage through that channel, but it's about offering a variety of channels. So I just really want to commend the staff on the various things they explored this LTP. And yeah, there's plenty to learn. I'm sure that we all have reflection on things that we think might have gone better or would have offered us greater insight. But I do want to commend the communications team for what they put forward. Did you want to make any additional?
No, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate that we do try very hard, and the team tries very hard to find the best way of reaching people today. No, I don't need to say much more other than, we also got, I'm just trying to find the stat, the amount of views we got on our website. We tried to push as many people to our website to see our consultation document. And I think it's something like 59,000, I just can't find the number in here. And that was highly successful as well. And that was the whole point of it, not just to listen to people in social media with different clips and whatever, was to try and get them to our website to look at our document so that they could decide whether they wanted to submit or not.
And I suppose I also draw people's attention on page 26, those Facebook Live events. When you look at that, particularly the natural heritage rate, where we had technical difficulties on the day it was scheduled, had to reschedule it, and we still had 42 people that came online during that specific window. I think that really shows that channel as a way of engaging with our community that maybe we haven't utilized in the past. So really impressed with what the team has put together throughout this process and facilitating ways for our communities to understand what's being proposed and to give them various options to engage. All right.
And I will say it at the end, but just great work from the staff to get us to this point. We'll double round again at the end of it, but thanks for getting us here.
Great. Okay. So we first go to the first proposal? Is that what we're going to do now?
Yes,
Or are you
it's
taking
Madam
area?
Chair. No, so that's the first couple of reports, which are really consultation and engagement and just what we're here to do this week. So the first report in terms of a decision is page 170 of the agenda in terms of the natural heritage rate. I'm assuming somebody's able to talk to that because I'm not.
Who's drawing the short straw?
So, Madam Clare, why Greg's come out? Oh, sorry, Madam Chair, to be clear. Just to clarify, after each of these, are we voting to?
No, we're just going to do a straw poll, just an indication, just to see at this point in time where people might be landing on this. It will not be a motion because, as I said, this has an impact. Every one of these has a cumulative
So
and collective
just
impact.
to clarify again, at the end, then we'll have a roundabout what the rate will be, and then we vote on.
Well, then we can have further discussion around various ways we might hit that that appropriate, comfortable spot.
If I could just ask Janine to perhaps clarify, if councillors do have questions about options, you'd be able to give them an indication of what that would mean for any change in the rate.
No pressure at all. I will do my best. Depends on what it is.
All right. Greg.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair. Thank you. And good morning, councillors. Yes, so your first item today is around our region's biodiversity. And so this was a specific proposal around our Natural Heritage Partnership Program, which funds both our Natural Heritage Fund, Environmental Initiatives Fund and Small Scale Fund. If you recall, the funding that's provided through the Natural Heritage Fund hasn't shifted for a number of years. And so the proposal put to you was to lift that to $8.68, based on that amount taking care of inflation since the rate was first introduced a number of years back. A further option was introduced as well, which recognised that we do routinely see an oversubscription of the Natural Heritage Partnership project, and an acknowledgement in terms of the interest and the outcomes that are achieved through this program. And so a further option of $15 was also put forward for consideration. And just a reminder, these are per property rates, so these aren't based on capital value or anything. These are just purely per property rates across the region. So the results of the consultation are provided for you in summary in the document, noting that the highest percentage was expressed for option 2, which is $15. And I know as councillors, if you recall, there are a number of presentations to you as part of the hearings, particularly from the community groups that get involved in restoring our region's biodiversity, and certainly interested in the funding that we are able to provide alongside of our other partners in the space. So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to leave it there. I do have Patrick Whaley, our Manager Biosecurity and Biodiversity, here to assist with any more detailed questions, but happy to throw open for questions and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbarsman.
Yeah, just a question to you, Greg. You've mentioned that the community groups who submitted actually benefit from this funding. Would you say they had a vested interest in increasing the rate significantly?
Yes. Yes, I mean, they have expressed their preference for very good reasons. Yeah.
Councillor Graff.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Increasing the rate, it's just about tripled from 580 to 15 if it went that way.
Mm.
What would be the outcome? Would there be just more people applying for money, more community groups involved, or does it mean there'll be different ways of using that money? How do you see it transpiring?
So I guess to answer the last part first, we have undertaken a review of the policy that underpins the way that we put our funding out under the Natural Heritage Partnership Program, and that did introduce some different ways that we will be managing the program. So to answer that first part of the question, in terms of the outcomes achieved with the $15 per property, so there's two elements. One is catch up on inflation in terms of being able to, I guess, respond in a similar way that was envisaged when this natural heritage rate first came in. But the second part is it increases our ability to respond to the kind of demand that we see coming through, whether that means more groups receive funding or there are larger funds or grants provided. Kind of depends on year to year the kind of applications that are received.
Yeah.
Lamar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just first off, I'd like to recognise the fact that I do see the impact that this will have on ratepayers. But what I do believe is that we've recognised that the 580 hasn't kept up with inflation. So bringing it up to the 886 is only going to be able to do what we're doing now with those inflation pressures. What I would say is I think those groups that actually submitted to us, there was some awesome stuff coming out of that the work they were doing on the ground. So, and a number of them, they're prepared to pay the extra $10 from what it is now and also do all that volunteer work. So I think for us, we've spoken through the last 12 months of this triennium on investing more in biodiversity, biosecurity, and I think this is the ideal vehicle to do it with not a great deal of impact per property with only that $10 difference. So I'd certainly be supporting option 2. Thanks. Thank you.
So Nicole.
Yeah, I agree with everything Warren just said. That's my thinking also, and from what I've heard. But my question just, has anyone calculated how long the 868 takes to get to $15 with likely inflation? I calculated roughly 5 years, but.
Good question. I don't have the answer to that one.
No worries. That's my best guess. I'm sure you can all do your own. Thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
I won't repeat anything that Warren said because I totally agree with it. It's absolutely right. But I did want to point out that we have seen the evidence of these people coming in here and the snowball effect. You know, I mean, the thing is that at the moment, this is a thing. It's a real thing. And there's more and more people in the region that want to do it. And we have that embarrassing cost problem of oversubscription. But we also have, as countless of those submitters pointed out, the multiplier effect. They actually had the data to demonstrate the multiplier effect. So I'll be voting for this. You all knew that anyway. But if it goes for further debate later on, I'll be speaking again. So absolutely support this one.
Yeah, no, support what's been said and just point out in my, when we went down to Waitomo and Otorohanga, they're really interested in this and just, we probably all know this, but there's been a significant portion of this has gone to the Coromandel, which is all good because there's some really cool stuff going up there, but I think we're going to see quite a demand from other parts of the region, such as the King Country. And so again, I'm really supportive of the $15. And look, you're quite right, Ben, people do have a vested interest, but everyone that submits has a vested interest. That's just the reality of what we're dealing with, you know. And look, this is payback. It's payback time. We've spent the last 100 years raping the environment for our own benefits, and we've got to put a bit back into it. And what better way than to do it via partnerships with the community?
Councillor Downard.
Yeah, I agree with what's said, and this is one of the things that I did advocate in one of the few things I advocated in the long-term plan. But, you know, just about every speaker's talked about inflation, but people's wages and superannuations, theirs don't go up with inflation. And, you know, this is a 0.9, I think, % difference between the preferred option and the $15. So I'm going to have to support option 1 because I just think times are just tough, you know, for people out there. And as I said before, so even though I'd love to do 15 because I think every dollar, we've heard that every dollar spent is $10 worth of volunteers as well. So, and, you know, we had some great submitters in there, but I think we've still got to get back to the majority of the ratepayers that are struggling out there, and 0.9% is just too much, I think, for this time and this climate.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith, then I'll come to you, Councillor Mahuta. Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the rationale for increasing in rate of inflation, which is option 1. My concern is that was the preferred option that we went out with. And it's also the option that almost all the councils came back and supported. So I don't see why we're suddenly jumping to a much higher rate. And I'm concerned that if we look at what the feedback from the consultation is people are struggling. And we're looking at a 1.2% rate increase here at a time when we submitted, we actually went out and told them we were looking at 6. So we're pushing the rates up when I think option one would actually meet many of those needs.
Councillor Mahuta. All right, Tupa. We're not able to, we see you're unmuted. Oh, there we go. There you go.
Sorry, just for the same reasons as the other councillors, speaking in support of option 2, but wanting to reinforce whichever option we land on, that the funding in this whole area, not just our funding, has moved. So I actually think option 2 is just holding the line. It won't increase the environmental outcomes because there's a lack of funding all over the place, to the points the other councillors were making. And we must do the work on trying to create an environment of collective impact with other funders. Just wanting to put that point in. Thank you, Pamela. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Any other comments or questions in relation to this? Right,
Just a clarification, if I could, there were a few other things that came up in submissions, whether they be, biodiversity related, like pest control, et cetera, et cetera. And can we have a chance to speak to those in the CE submission section? Because they don't really fall under this very neatly. This is a very clear one way or the other decision. Is that about right? That
Sure.
If we want to raise those, then we can.
During the CE submission or during the other matters?
Other matters, yeah.
The other matters, yeah.
Cool. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Can I just clarify with the Councillor Nicol, these are matters that were raised in submissions that you're saying that you wanted to discuss?
Yes.
Janine, would that
Other
be
matters is probably the best one.
Well, I'm just wondering whether if they were around the biodiversity theme, whether they're better discussed here, if it's specific to this.
I don't think that they'll specifically change this particular question and deliberation piece. They're kind of like, more funding for wilding pines or support for hornwort and karapiro that came up from Waipa District Council. Quite small things. So just where to address those in the course of the meeting was my only question.
Are those not policy?
I think
decisions?
7.8 is probably the best place for other feedback. So
Okay.
thanks for bringing
We'll
that
do
to
it
my
under other
attention.
matters.
Thank
right?
you.
All right. So as I said, I'm keen to just do a bit of a straw poll, just see where we're at. So we've got 3 options. So option 1 is the increase to $8.68. Can I get you to put your hand up if you're keen on that? $8.68. So 1, 2. All right, option 2 is the 15. Can I get you to put your hand up? 8. Was that your hand up? Yep. Tipa, I see you. Fine. And then was there anybody for option 3, which was remaining at maintaining it at $5.80? No support for that. Okay. Great. Good stuff. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go to proposal number 2. Wait a minute, am I right? Let me just see where we're heading.
Page 179.
Yep, 179. So this is proposal number 2, simplifying the public transport investment. We've got Director King.
Morena Koto, Morena, Madam Chair. So this report continues with the discussion that was requested of staff through the business improvement review work in 2022 and sought the community's feedback on moving to the collection of a regional public transport rate. The two questions that were posed were, one, were you in favour of moving to a regional rate? And then if you were in favour or not, your view on two models for that. So the focus is really on understanding the level of support for a transition to the collection widening, while the recommendation in the report is to proceed to expand the regional rate. That's done noting that work would be required on the model and on the distribution and on the approach that's taken, which would be reconsulted as part of next year's annual plan. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. I think I've got first. Yep, I've got Councillor Smith, Dunbar Smith, and then Graf. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I don't really want to shortcut this discussion, but I think it really is a simple question right now. And maybe I've got some questions as well. I look back at the submission from Taupo District Council. They don't want a bar of regional rating. You've got other councils that are quite supportive of the regional rating, but absolutely dislike the options presented. I think this is more complex than what was anticipated, and I think it needs more work. Having said that, I don't see there's a reason why regional rating, whether it is regional rating of the Willing, that is the likes of the ones that supported it, and then what do you do with the likes of Taupo or other councils that want to preserve their sovereignty? So I think for me, I would support the movement to regional rating, and then I come to the options presented. For those, I've not hidden the fact that I went out to my constituency and pointed out the costs, which I do not believe in all seriousness that staff really understood what was being recommended, nor do I believe that some of my colleagues around this table, and I'm not trying to insult you, but I don't think you understood the real implications of what we were doing. So I'm not trying to be difficult here, but the reality is the options were not really fair. And so we heard different submitters say, such as within the Waikato constituency where I come from, is move it to the region, but base it on what the district council does already. Other councils have had other, like Mayor Robinson from Waitoma saying, don't do the 5 kilometres, rate the town. So therefore, I think this is a lot of work to be done before we get to a fair result. And thus, whilst I'm prepared to support regional rating for those of the Willing, I do not believe we've got it right. And if we do go for regional rating, I would like to see more councillors involved in working with staff to get to a result that is able to be taken out in the annual plan for options as was indicated. I don't think we should be looking at option 1 or option 2 in that second questioning today. It's whether we move to regional rating or not, because we have got so much more to do. And that's the way I'll vote if we have that option. Thank you.
Just can I clarify with you, Phil, because since there were two fundamental questions in this, I'm just noting the staff recommendation. I'm noting what's listed in paragraph 2, capital I, little I, where we talk about an option 1, and then to capital II, little I, where we also say option 1. So just want to make sure I'm clear on the recommendation. When you say proceeds with option 1, are you talking about the option of regional rating, not the 5Ks versus the 800K meters, right? Right. So that's a yes.
That's correct. And yes, rereading the recommendations, we could have made that more clear.
Okay. So I just want us to be all on the same page here. So you, the recommendation is that we proceed with regional rating, but you've got subject to refinements to the satisfaction of council. So that's where if council decided that neither options, the second set of options, 1 and 2, the 5Ks or the 800 meters was not appropriate, there's still an avenue to explore further, as Councillor Smith is suggesting, over the next 12 months.
So absolutely, and the report has several references back to a section in the report called refinements, which sets out how we would look to do that and what the wider range of options could be. At a background level, subject to your approval at this point, we're already mapping out when we would talk to all of council around those options and redo that work with all of council over the next 6 months.
Okay, so really, yeah. Yeah, great. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So when you're speaking, really keen to hear clearly, yes or no to, at this point in time, yes or no to regional rating. And then secondly, your views on the options around the distance and how that, who and where that rating was applied to. If that was any sort of clarity. I don't know. All right, Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Right. Now, item number 25 is talking about refined options subject to consultation, which I guess is your second option there. And it will come through a special consultative procedure through the annual plan. So that's what you're anticipating will happen?
So we've been really clear that if an option other than the options that were consulted upon were to be your preferred approach, there would need to be new consultation, and we're proposing the 25-26 annual plan as the vehicle for that special consultative procedure.
So if we take your recommendation, we'd anticipate this would occur. There would be a special consultation process, yeah.
Correct.
But that consultation would not be, let's say that council decided it's a yes for regional rating. We wouldn't have to reconsult on the yes or no for regional rating. The only thing we'd be going out with a special consultation on is how and where it gets applied.
Correct.
Okay.
So second supplementary to that, if we opt for regional rating, but 1 or 2 of the councils don't want it, is it mandated over them? Would this be mandated over Taupo District?
That would be your decision. We've said along the way through the consultation and the discussions with councils that we would be looking for support at a district by district level. So there is potential for it to expand based on the agreement of both parties. If certain districts wanted to join and certain districts didn't, then that is an option available to them and to you as part of this decision.
So if we vote today for regional rating, are we mandating or are we doing it because we need some clarity about what that means? If it means it's going to be district by district, that's different than if it's mandated because we're making that decision today.
Through the chair, my assessment would be that in supporting the recommendation for regional rating, that is a concept that we want to take rating across a larger area. The actual method to do that, by which that's done, is what would be worked out between now and the 25-26 annual plan, and it would require consultation through a special consultative process because it would be a new rate that we're not actually setting at the moment. So,
but would it require Taupo District to agree to regional rating, or would we be telling them?
So through the chair, that's what we've, I think, Phil had indicated, case by case, district by district. I think we would welcome the feedback of the district councils, but ultimately the decision will sit with this council.
But just clarifying, so if we make a decision in this annual plan to do regional rating, that's the decision. There's no flexibility about district.
So there is, because we haven't determined the basis on which that rate will be assessed.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith, if it helps, I think what I've heard Janine answer, we could mandate it, but whether we would is a completely different matter. we might want to go back at and talk with that district before we made a decision.
Particularly if the rating model looks quite different to what they've understood it to be through this engagement process. So I think this decision sets a direction of travel and means that staff can get on with the work around exactly what those models of rating would look like. That can reflect in the concerns that we've heard through some of those territorial authorities through this process.
Councillor Graf.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I support regional rating, and glad to hear that we're not deciding on the model side of things yet because it's completely wrong. But I think that the way staff have put forward the two options has been good because it's created a lot of interest and a lot of feedback, and that's very helpful. And if I've got it correct, we're going to decide on the regional now. Well, not now, but next month. And then we've got a year to work through and all agree on the modelling.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And
The annual
reconsult
plan.
on specifically what the model looks like.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you.
Councillor Strange.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, staff, for your work on this. It's been many years in the making. And I just would like to remind councillors that we did have a workshop on the rating model, which everyone was invited to contribute to what the rating model might look like. And through that process, we came up with these two options. So it was a collective thought process from around our table to get to where we've got to. However, things as perhaps that process didn't get the buy-in that we needed, we found ourselves in this situation. So having read through all the submissions, listened carefully to everyone who came in to speak, also speaking to people out in the community as well. Yeah, what I've heard, is support for that regional model, for efficiencies, for cost savings, for staff time within those district councils that we don't currently rate, bearing in mind we already target rate 4 of them. Yeah, so moving forward, option 1 of the first one, I think there is support out there for us to progress with that. But what I'm hearing loud and clear is that what that looks like, still needs working through. But again, I am encouraged that it has, like Councillor Graf said, it has sparked that conversation. We've heard from many communities that they value what they've got. We've heard, I will just bring up Turangi and Taupo again, they want more. They've had huge success with what has been provided, and part of the frustration that I heard is they want more. And so really encouraging to hear what's working, what's not working, what we could do better. So yeah, really happy with the consultation process and where we've got to. So yeah, thank you everyone involved.
Councillor Mahuta. Just on mute there. There we go. On mute. Oh. There you go.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me, Pamela.
I can hear you.
Ah, cool. No, just support of regional rating. Grateful for the work that's been done and look forward to the further work to get to I guess more of a regionally wide satisfactory number. Thank you, Pamela.
Thanks for that, Tippa. Councillor Nicol.
Yeah, I think we heard loud and clear from a lot of people that they support regional rating and all the efficiencies that come with it. So feeling really comfortable in that area. Looking forward to and feeling excited about how we could work through with so many different TAs about how they will feel that they've still got really good control over this, about the services while working with us. I think that whole opportunity for better collaboration between us and the TAs, this is a fantastic topic to do well, whether through the Regional Transport Committee, of course, which is where it should lie largely, but also some work needing to be done outside of that perhaps to make sure that it happens. So happy with the staff recommendation to make a start and then work through that and how we can be really collaborative. Thank you.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just noting that there were 3 councillors that said no to question 1, so obviously I know councillors are aware of that. Secondly, I have a little bit of concern around our legal requirements for consultation, and I do believe that question 1 directly is related to question 2. So as long as staff can alleviate that for me, that's all good. And then thirdly, Janine, so if we only go with yes, we are going to rate, how does that, but without the nuts and bolts behind it, how does that affect the money value in that year 1 when we're actually not coming up with a plan? Sorry.
Sorry.
No, thank you. So through the chair, the LTP was always based on the premise of we wouldn't actually be commencing any regional rating until year 2. So in year 1, we've reflected the current model in terms of we invoice the territorial authorities for their share. In year 2, and part of the reason why we've got the uplift in rates, particularly in year 2, is at that point in time, it's assumed that that funding will come into our rates. The method for that hasn't been determined. So we'd always anticipated this sort of staging of make a decision now, do some more work, and then implement a rate for year 2.
Sorry, I've lost.
So through the chair, I think the fact that our budget has been determined on the basis of that staging, and I was just, sorry, I had picked this up to check the wording in here exactly on that. I think council's decision, if you go with option 1 and further work, is not inconsistent with what's been consulted on, but I'll just do a quick read to make sure that
Is that
telling any porkies.
I'm making the assumption that if there was a regional rating that came into play in year 2, that the amount you collect is the amount you collect. If you did it, like, let's just say it was general rated across the entire region, it's the same quantum as if
The
it was
distribution.
targeted specifically.
Correct.
So the rate impact doesn't change in relation to the model.
It's who pays within that.
It's who pays that rate.
So through the chair, the consultation document does note our proposal involves Waikato Regional Council rating for existing public transport services in Otorohanga, Rotorua, South Waikato, Taupo, Waikato Waipa and Waitomo districts from 25-26. So, yeah.
And in addition to that, if I understand it correctly, at least one of those districts, I'm thinking Waikato district, have already planned to put their rate up, and that will get reflected into our rates if we were to take it.
I just get, Robbie, can I get you to, I've got a order. I've got Cookson, Hodge, Dunbar, Smith, and Smith.
So I think in terms of that year 2 increase, that's based on a currently proposed program of trial services. There remains a question mark, I guess, over those dependent on funding from NZTA to support them. So I think we talked a lot through the LTP of saying that number is likely to come down if the NZTA if NZTA isn't able to or prepared to fund those new trial services. But we'll pick that up through the annual plan process.
Quite frustrating, isn't it?
Mm.
Because how are we meant to go out and give any sort of confident indication to our communities of the rating impact of PT when an enormous component of what goes ahead and the resulting financial outlay that is required is out of our control, out of our community's control to a certain extent. And I'm just expressing some frustration in the process. All right, I've got Councillor Cookson and then Councillor Hodge. Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm struggling with both of it because unless you're going to provide the service that the community wants, and some of the communities don't want regional transport, they just want community service transport. There's a real issue of why I want to vote for regional rating when you're not going to supply the service they require. So I'd
That's
have
an
to.
assumption you're making. though.
No, well, no, it's the assumption's been out there in the TAs for a long time. So you've got to provide me that you are going to provide the service that they want if you want a regional rate it. I think that's a fair question.
I get a red light.
So that is a commitment that we would make, and we always have made around wanting to work with everybody across communities and councils to deliver public transport that they want. It's always a process of what's affordable and what's achievable at any given time. The change to deliver everything that everybody wants would have a significant rates increase beyond the numbers in the current long-term plan. That may well be what you are looking to do in future years, and that would be okay, subject to NZTA funding.
Yep.
But the other thing is that as we now, over the next 2 years, work towards renewing all of our public transport contracts, we're doing network reviews, we are engaging with communities and councils now and over the next year and a half or so, where we will look to rebuild up exactly what communities do want public transport to be and provide for them in their local area.
You know, these communities have been asking for the service to change for over 3 years, and they haven't changed.
We are in the context of 9-year contracts and applying for funding for trial services every 3 years. We don't have the budgets or the ability to deliver big changes mid-cycle, unfortunately.
But the services the community are keep paying for that haven't delivered anything to them. You got services from Pyroar that one person rides on every day trying to get to Hamilton. Yet the whole community is paying for that one person to ride on. That service either should have been shut down or something should have been changed about it a long time before we got to here today to discuss it. And I think those communities say these things, but we don't listen. So I'm asking for assurance that you are going to listen to those TAs clearly if you want me to vote for a regional transport rate. That's all I'm saying. I just want that very clear.
And the reports on the changes. No.
No, let the director respond.
The reports on those changes in that part of the region have been going through Regional Transport Committee over the last 6 months, and we've given copies of them to you. If they don't reflect what your understanding or the community's understanding is of what they are looking for, then we're happy to continue that conversation. But that work has been going through a process over the last 6 months.
Councillor Hodge.
Public transport is my pet hate. Mostly because, mostly because my constituencies are rural. And over the many years, I've managed to fight for, South Waikato, Tiamatu, but they have over years got what they should have had anyway. So I understand this option, and I think I understand the fact that hopefully with it being regional, everybody will get something. So that's what I'm hoping for, Phil, is that this regional rating will open the door for all of those rural people who have been struggling to get a decent public transport. Because if it doesn't, then it goes against my my thoughts, my belief. So at this point in time, listening to everybody, I can see there's warranty in that regional rating. When it comes to the next one, it's going to be a hell of a lot different. But in saying that, when's the next time public transport will come back to the table, Janine? Because if nothing's happened between now and then, I can guarantee that my thoughts, if I'm still here, are going to change. But today, I'm going to believe that this option 1 is going to help all of our people, WRC in the rural area, to get something around public transport.
I'm going to go to Councillor Hughes and Councillor Downard because they have not yet spoken on this. Councillor Hughes.
I would just love to pick up on that line from Councillor Hodge. It's one of my fast becoming my pet hate as well. Thank you. I would just like to respond to the Chair's expression of frustration about the changes in policy. And I think what you need to do, Chair, is to start to listen to the rhetoric that's coming out of Wellington. I think the policy has been very clearly articulated by the Minister, and we need to follow that. And if we don't follow it at your peril, because that's where we're going.
I wasn't asserting that we should not be listening to the minister or central government. I was expressing frustration that the timing of all these things and the very clear financial impact that those decisions have on this council and our ratepayers is frustrating.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and that's what I'm saying. You need to listen to what he's saying because it's only going to get worse.
Councillor Downard.
Yeah, this has been a hard one for me. Just what I believe in, public transport, and I do believe in public transport. But again, as some of them have said, and especially Councillor Hodge, I think that's why we advocated in the long-term plan for the extra 100,000 in the community transport. I think that is our public transport in the rural communities. But again, I think I failed the ratepayers in our workshops and coming into what should have been put into the long-term plan. And I think a lot of the people out there, the ratepayers, didn't understand this option 1 and the follow-on of option 1 and 2 with the rating to some people, and it wasn't until Councillor Smith did some of those rating impacts on those people in those option 1 and 2 that really scared me, and probably should have been more over that right from the beginning. So I'm really even struggling with the Waikato regional rating over the whole region. I think we need to have, after the long-term processes, to get into this and really workshop it. And then come out in the consultation in the annual plan, really what these two, the regional rating and the impacts they have on all TAs, and listen to them as they come back. Also with the Taupo districts submission, I understand that they weren't totally against the regional rating. They just thought that they would be not heard on the smaller communities, Turangi and Mangakino. And as Councillor Ma said, there was Waikato, and I think Haraki was another one as well. So I think there's still confusion, and especially for the ratepayers on submitting to this, there was confusion out there on exactly what they were answering.
And I would concur. That's certainly what I have heard from constituents, is they didn't understand what they were being asked about. And I think we missed the mark on some of the clarity. Now there's others who still want to speak, but those who want to speak have spoken already. Just really canvassing. I've got Councillor Dunbar Smith, Councillor Strange, and Councillor Nicol. I'm just looking and going, is there something brand new? Is there some?
Yeah.
Councillor Smith?
Look, I think we've heard the regional rating. Yes, it's the next stage of this, and on page 179, you've got the, under item 5, bullet point 2, that having taken into account of submissions made and points raised, council proceeds to develop options for consultation in the 2025-26 annual plan. To me, I will be proposing that instead of what's written. And I also want to see councillors involved early on in workshops about what are the alternatives, what are the options, and really working them up in consultation with staff together, rather than staff going away. We have, I've been part of this process in another council where the staff and councillors work closely, and we got a better result rather than coming back with options and then you fight the way through it and trying to come up with new ones. Let's work together to build them. So, Madam Chair, I'll be recommending that we change the recommendation there to what I've just read out. And I think, for me, that's critical. Otherwise, if that's not going to go through, I won't support it either.
So just, I'm just referring back to the clarification we had at the beginning, that when we say option 1, what we're talking about there is that the recommendation is that we proceed with regional rating.
Well, maybe we should say
And
that, Madam
that
Chair.
we are, we're gonna have to change the wording because we got too many option 1s out there on this. So, so it's that, because I am hearing general overall support for a regional rating. It's the nuts and bolts of it that we need to work our way through over the next 12 months. So it's sort of a rejection of both the options in relation to the distance, the targeting. So neither 1 nor 2 in that
So, Madam Chair, we
situation.
proceed with regional rating of the willing. And secondly, that council develops options to be taken out for consultation.
I think it's that council proceeds with a regional rating approach to public transport.
I don't care what the words are, we just need.
So, what have you got there?
It
Across
might
the
just be sort of a full stop and a separate recommendation around.
Yeah, and again, we're not,
just
we're not
separate it
moving
out.
or seconding, you know what, this right now. I just want us to, well, so here we go. I'll do a straw poll, regional rating, just the regional rating. Regional rating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 with TIPA. Okay, so we're gonna make sure that our motion is saying regional rating, but we all equally recognize that the options we went out with did not have significant levels of support. And we need to rework that.
And do we have to actually qualify that by saying subject to receiving, this level of support through the annual plan process?
I think denoting the annual plan process is.
But it's full so the revised resolution is for consultation.
Yeah.
So I think just to separate those two things out slightly to make it really clear, it's one decision that you're making now, and there's one action in terms of further work around the options that you will consult on through the 25-26 annual plan.
Should we, just for clarity, because I don't want people to think that if we made this decision that regional rating starts on the 1st of July of 2024.
So, Madam Chair, it can't if we've got the 25-20 consultation in 25-26.
I ask for a further word to be put on there, please, after further implementation options. Because you don't want another option about regional rating.
About regional rating, yeah, that's why I'm like. Okay. Yeah, but we're just signposting what annual plan process that will happen in.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, like, I believe that it should be, everything should be consulted in the annual plan, even the regional rating, because those options, they follow on from whether they're going to have the regional rating. That's what happened in the long-term plan with this. I don't believe that we had true clarity for our ratepayers to make a submission on both of those.
I
Because
felt,
what happens if you have regional rating that's already guaranteed? Okay, we've put it in the long-term plan, but then we workshop what the options are, and they, you know, they don't agree on all those. That's the TAs are still obligated for that regional rating, aren't they? Even if they don't agree with any of those options. You know, you'd want feedback on both of those.
I think if we are responsible for regional rating going forward, we have an obligation to go out and we go to the community about the how. We've got to have some finality around that so we can move forward, as opposed to always going around in a circle about who's going to be responsible for agreeing what that rating can be. We will be.
Yeah, but that was the whole thing about the Taupo District Council submission, is that they want to be heard. We're virtually telling all 11 TAs that regional rating is going to come in. This is the option, because we're going to have to, because, you know, it's already, if we vote for this to go in, then we're virtually telling them that all 11 TAs, regional ratings in, you've only got the choice of these options.
So could we,
no, we're saying regional ratings coming in, we're gonna work through with you what the options
Yeah.
might look like, and that is their opportunity for Taupo District Council or anybody else.
Yeah,
to
but what if
provide
they don't
feedback.
agree with any of those options? They're still stuck with the regional rating,
Or the service,
or can't get funding for them yet.
or the service. They mightn't agree with the service either.
So just seek some clarity from Phil or Janine on it, but they will, if they are doing rating now, they have to give it up. So they can't have another way of deciding what it is. I'm sure we will work really closely with the districts and those communities, because there's still things about infrastructure that need to be provided to be able to enable services to occur. And so we can't do it in isolation anyway. I'm just seeking clarity from the other end.
I completely agree. Everything to do with public transport is a partnership with the Crown funders and with the TAs who provide infrastructure for us to operate buses on, and bus stops and bus lanes and shelters and everything else. So there will always be partnership in this. I believe we have good systems in place now for that partnership to occur. If councils are concerned about that going backwards, then absolutely we should be assuring them that we're totally committed to continuing that partnership we already have.
Okay, I just, is
Yes,
there a point of clarification?
yeah, should we add into that, that first, option number 2, subject to individual TA support or agreement or endorsement?
What I'm gonna suggest, because we're not passing any motions now, I think we've read the room on most of this. So what I'm gonna suggest is that we adjourn now. And because obviously there's the specifics of wordings and things to still work through. But I would like,
Can I just ask a quick question? Materiality. I've just worked out, with the 220,000 ratepayers, 195 supported this, which is 0.008%. The materiality of the numbers that we're taking into account. It's the only submissions that we got, but it's less than 1/10 of 1%. I just make.
and we'll go through that. If this proceeds as we are discussing, we'll be getting specific feedback. Okay, I'm going to, do you want to? Nope.
I was just going to say that is the case with nearly everything we're dealing with, not just this matter. And so that's why we take into account a whole range of matters for you to help make decisions.
And just, I really don't like it when we all start getting up and walking away when I have not adjourned the meeting yet. All right? I don't like that. So I am now going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. It is, just for note, 11:09.